Good evening, campers, and welcome back to the Campfire. Tonight, we have 5 very scary stories for you. These stories are bound to make you check your closet before you go to bed. But, without further ado, the fire's set, the marshmallows are roasting, so sit back, relax, and let the nightmares begin. My friends and I approached the old mansion, which stood in solitary among the bare trees. The darkness of the night was broken only by the pale orange shine of the blood moon. Besides the soft sounds of our careful footsteps, nothing could be heard. Once we reached the yard, we snuck around the mansion and made sure that no one was here. Accompanied by a crunching sound, Dave broke open the window to the living room with a crowbar. Quickly, all of us got inside. We quietly started to search the living room for items of value that we could steal. I was just analyzing a candlestick, wondering whether it was made of real gold, when suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps slowly coming down a staircase interrupted the silence. Everyone froze and looked at one another in shock. A few moments later, the footsteps stopped right in front of the door to the living room. Dave pressed a finger against his lips, signaling for us to stay quiet. Then he snuck slowly and quietly towards the door, opening it very carefully. Behind the door was a dark corridor which led to a staircase to the second floor, and another staircase to the cellar. "We must have heard wrong," Dave said, letting out a sigh of relief. "Old houses sometimes make these kind of noises," he continued. Relieved, Simon and I nodded in agreement. We decided to check out the cellar next, as that's the place where safes were normally located. The cellar was pitch black, moist, and a rusty smell crept up my nose. When we turned on our flashlights, we saw that the shelves were full of strange glasses, filled with brown liquid containing various bizarre objects. Spiderwebs and dust were everywhere, and a tingling sensation of uneasiness crawled up my spine. With a deafening bang, the door to the cellar went shut. Heavy footsteps came down the staircase, this time very quickly. Suddenly, they stopped again. The light of Dave's flashlight shined up on an old man with white hair and tired red eyes. He stared at us with a blank expression, just standing there and breathing heavily. Dave was the first to react. With a rallying cry, he ran towards the man, swinging his crowbar. However, before he could reach him, the man reached out his arm and grabbed Dave by the throat. Then, with a flick of his hand, he broke Dave's neck. Dave's lifeless body slumped to the floor. The horrible cracking noise of Dave's neck was still sounding in my ears when the man started to run towards Simon. I saw my chance and sprinted up the stairs back to the living room while hearing Simon's screams behind me. I rushed out of the window and ran, never looking back. Only when I arrived home, I felt safe. I started to write this down, dearly warning everyone not to break into seemingly empty homes. However, now I can suddenly hear very heavy footsteps slowly coming up my staircase. Ron slumped in his chair as he gave a deep sigh and gripped a bunch of his disheveled hair. He was out of ideas. Week after week, year after year, he pumped out stories as a food blogger for a big lifestyle website. Michelin-starred restaurants, fine wines, hole-in-the-wall pop-ups, award-winning and social media recipes. He wrote about them all, and a glistening trophy case behind him showed the fruits of his labor. With his deadline approaching and a promotion at stake, he had nothing. Ron stared blankly at the blinking cursor and the endless canvas ahead of him. His tired eyes shifted to the soft glow of his smartphone as he nursed the last diluted drops of his drink. That's when a notification appeared on his phone. Ron sat up a bit straighter as he scanned the text message. "Hey Ron, this drink looks so good. Maybe you can try it out and do a story on it. Your favorite social editor, Marie." Ron clicked the link that Marie had sent in the text message, and his initial curiosity sunk back into the chair. Another TikTok recipe? He glanced at the blank page in front of him, rolled his eyes, and muttered, "Damn it, at least it's something." Ron got all the ingredients for the cocktail and set up his camera for the shoot. He poured various liquors into the cup and finished it off with an array of spices. Ron grimaced at the chunky, brown excuse of a cocktail in front of him and paused. After a moment, he shook his head, held his breath, and gulped it down. In between bouts of coughing, Ron yelled, "Oh my gosh, that was so nasty. How is this trending right now?" A buzz immediately started to settle in, followed by a burning sensation down his throat. Ron stumbled slightly to his desk and sunk back into his chair. All of a sudden, Ron gripped his stomach in searing pain and crumbled to the ground in a writhing heap. Ron gave multiple screams in agony as the drink traveled further down into his intestines. He reached up for his phone and, with another scream and a reach, knocked it down onto the floor beside him. Ron tried to grip his phone, but he couldn't feel his hands anymore. Instead, he used his tongue to enter his passcode. His eyesight blurred as he tried to navigate the home screen. He attempted to dial 911 with his tongue, but it started to harden and stopped moving. Ron felt an immense sense of helplessness as each short, shallow breath felt like a quick stab to the lungs. Suddenly, there was a text message from Marie. "Good night, Ron. I hope the drink was delish." A few seconds later, a news notification popped up. He squinted, trying to focus on the screen. Ron's eyes trembled and started to release bloody tears. He tried to cry, but the room remained silent. The notification read, "TikTok removes popular drink recipe as FBI unearths massive poisoning campaign." Cool water washed over Ryan and Bianca's feet as they stood there at the shore. It was a bright summer day, and with the gentle breeze and the sun gleaming down, it seemed like the perfect day to put the toes in the sand. After laying their towels down and cracking a few cold beers, all they had to do now was enjoy the view and listen to the calming sound of waves caressing the beach. It was wonderful, exactly what they needed after a long and hectic week at work. What started as playful splashing led to the inevitable chase into deeper water, and soon they were up to their knees. Ryan splashed Bianca, and she shrieked at the chilly water, starting a back and forth of mischief until Bianca tackled him into the water. Together, they came up gasping and called a truce, and it was only seconds until they found an embrace and watched the horizon together. Seagulls cried in the distance. Yards away, a jet ski soared past, sending an echo of waves in the water. Ryan was so caught up in it all that he almost didn't hear Bianca speak. "Do you see that?" she said, pointing at a boat slowly wobbling in the lake. "The boat?" Ryan asked. "No, that." He followed her finger to the lone fisherman casting a line into the water. He held the rod loosely, ball cap and shades fighting the sun, a Hawaiian shirt blowing in the wind. Not a care in the world. It took Ryan a moment before he saw it, but when he did, he felt his stomach twist into knots. Half obscured by the lapping waves was something pale and veiny, holding on to the ladder with white knuckles, and it was trying to climb up. Ryan and Bianca looked at each other and saw the color drain from each other's faces. They didn't know what it was, but it looked wrong. In an unspoken agreement, they took off into the water, flailing their arms and shouting at the fishermen. The water got deeper and colder as they trounced further, over their knees, then waist high. They shouted for his attention, and as they reached the end of the sandbar, their voices finally reached him. With the water at their chest and their toes approaching the drop-off, the fishermen turned, offering a smile and a wave. Now that they were closer, they could see the pale humanoid shape climbing another rung. Its chest heaved as it climbed, dual sets of gills widening like jagged slashes. In terror, they looked from the being to the fisherman, who was now taking off his sunglasses, his face wrinkled with concerned confusion. He dropped the pole and pointed at them, yelling something that they couldn't quite hear. Ryan looked worriedly at Bianca, but found nothing but bubbling water. She was nowhere to be found. Before he could yell for her, he felt the icy grip on his ankle, and he was yanked under. Shanna and David were brother and sister, and they lived with their father in the country. She was 10 to his 9, and they were the best of friends. Since their mother had died some years ago, they'd all grown close and were very happy. But then she came. Trisha had come once she married their father and had immediately begun inserting herself into their customs and rituals. She was ruining everything. Shauna and David did not like that at all. Still, their house was nestled up to a forest, and in the forest, there were remains of several old log cabins from way back in the olden times. It was a marvelous place to play, and they went there often, especially since she came. Several years before, they found a dry well, set apart and hidden from where the dilapidated cabins were. It was off the beaten path and surrounded by undergrowth so thick, one would almost have to know that it was there to find it. They rigged a pulley and rope system to allow themselves in and out of the well, and it had been their favorite hideout ever since. On a particular Saturday afternoon, they chose to visit the well. "Did Father seem bothered to you?" Shanna asked as they walked along through the woods. "No, not really," David replied, moving his little box from beneath one arm to the other. "But you know how he is. He tries to hide it." "True, that is true." They walked a little farther. "Did you tell him where we were going?" David shook his head. "I just told him we were taking a walk into the woods. Said we'd be back by supper." "What are we having? Did he say?" David shook his head. "I'm sure it'll be good though." "Yeah, as long as he's the one doing the cooking." They both giggled, then Shanna shushed him. They were approaching the well, and it was their custom to do so quietly. Once they made it through the undergrowth, David set his box on the rock wall surrounding the well, and then the both of them peered into the hole, allowing their eyes time to adjust to the shadowy darkness. Once they had, they looked at each other and smiled. "I forget," Shanna whispered. "What was in the box yesterday?" "Tarantulas. 2 tarantulas. And today? A rattlesnake. Ooh, that should be fun." Not that she really cared, but she whispered loudly enough to awaken their captive. Trisha had willingly gone into the woods with the children back on Wednesday, and she'd been surprisingly easy to convince to go down the well. By now, she was getting very thirsty. "Children, please," Trisha begged weakly. "Please, get me out. I need water." "Give her the snake," Shanna said. David opened the box and dumped the snake down the well, and then they waited. They saw the snake strike several times, and then heard the scream rising up through the shaft and pouring harmlessly into the forest sky. When the chickens died, I thought at first it was the raccoons that did it. Maybe one had gotten into the coop and made quick work of them. But if it was a raccoon, it would have been a total mess. They would have been torn up, feathers everywhere. They just seemed to kind of keel over, some blood leaking from their poor little beaks. It made no sense. I was deeply saddened by the loss of my chickens. It was really the only thing that made my house in the country a farmhouse. When I started finding the dead raccoons in the yard not long after, I thought maybe there was something a little bigger on the property. They would be covered in little bites from head to toe. It was strange, like nothing I'd ever seen before. I have 10 acres, but half of it is divided by a thick tree line that leads to 5 or so acres I really don't mess with. Nothing but trees and bushes, so thick you can't see but a couple of yards in front of you. I contacted DNR, and they told me there was a coyote problem this season, and to shoot them on sight if I saw them in my yard. I'm not much of a hunter, but I keep a 12 gauge around just in case things get crazy. From then on, I kept it loaded by the front door. It was when the coyotes started showing up that I started to get worried. I found them in the same fashion as the raccoons, but worse. Their legs would be twisted, chunks missing, jaws broken. It didn't make any sense. I found myself looking to the tree line, to the dark woods beyond my house. Sometimes I felt something watching me from within those tree lines. I called DNR again. They told me bigger game wasn't common around here. Maybe there was a squabble in the pack. After days of watching the tree line, I started to think that maybe it was over, like whatever was out there had moved on. And just as I started to put away the nasty things behind me, I saw it. Deep in the trees, watching me. I don't know what it is. It has the head of a deer, but the eyes bleed, and from the neck down, its flesh turns to strands of something else. Something that doesn't make sense. Its body writhes in its confinement. I can't quite make it out from afar, but I swear, it looks like it has long spider legs. It watches me from the tree line, waiting. I know it's hungry. I decided in the morning I will go into the woods. I'm taking the shotgun and plenty of gasoline. I'm gonna find whatever den it lies in, and I'm going to set it on fire. The whole woods if I have to. For my chickens, if anything. And if you find me dead, sell my property. And for the love of God, do not go past the tree line. Hey there, campers. Did you enjoy tonight's tales? I hope you did. If you want to become an official camper, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have plenty of marshmallows, s'mores, oh yeah, and scary stories. So good night, campers. And remember, stay haunted. I'll see you next time.